Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to peek behind the curtain at Uber.
Ooh, Uber.
Yeah, ride sharing and all that. But have you ever stopped to think about all the data that goes into making those rides happen?
I mean, it's got to be a ton, right? Like
Way-
coordinating all those drivers and riders.
It's way more than you think. We're talking over 100,000 hosts, 300,000 workloads,
Wow.
and get this, 3.8 million containers.
3.8 million.
Million. Yeah, and we're going to break it all down today.
Okay, so what are we looking at? Like, where's all this info coming from?
Well, Uber Engineering, they actually put out this blog post back in July of 2024, and it dives deep into their secret weapon for data management.
Secret weapon. Sounds intense.
It is. They call it Odin, and it's a stateful platform, basically the brains behind the whole operation.
Stateful platform. I'm intrigued, but also kind of lost. What's the story here? Why do they even need this Odin thing?
So picture this. It's 2014, Uber's exploding in popularity, but they're still managing all this data manually.
Manually, you mean like spreadsheets and stuff?
Spreadsheets, runbooks, the whole nine yards.
Oh, man, can you imagine the chaos?
It was a logistical nightmare, right?
Mm.
As Uber grew, their data needs just skyrocketed and they hit a wall. That's where Odin comes in.
So Odin was their solution to this data management mayhem.
Exactly. It was their answer to the question of how do we handle this insane amount of data and keep everything running smoothly? And the cool thing is, Odin's not tied to any specific technology. It's like a universal data maestro.
Universal Data Maestro. Okay, now you're talking my language, so what's in this orchestra?
Oh, you name it. They've got Kafka, Cassandra, MySQL, even some of Uber's own internal solutions. Odin conducts it all.
That's pretty wild, like a one-platform-fits-all kind of deal, but how does it actually wrangle all that complexity?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. One of the things that makes Odin so innovative is its declarative approach.
Declarative.
It's like, instead of giving step-by-step instructions, you tell Odin what you want the end result to be, and it figures out how to make it happen.
Okay, so kind of like instead of giving someone turn-by-turn directions, you just tell them, take me to the nearest coffee shop.
You got it. And this is a huge shift in the world of infrastructure management. Uber's really leading the charge here.
Sounds like it takes a lot of the guesswork out of things.
Yeah.
But how do they make sure the system actually reaches that desired state? What's stopping things from going off the rails?
So imagine you have a whole team of tiny robots constantly monitoring the system, making sure everything's running smoothly.
Okay, I can kind of picture that.
That's basically what Odin does with its remediation loops.
Remediation loops.
Yeah, they're constantly checking if anything's out of whack. A server crashes, a workload needs more resources. Boom, remediation loop kicks in and fixes it.
Like a self-healing system, always adapting and adjusting.
Exactly. And to get that real-time view of the entire system, Odin uses this other Uber creation called Grail.
Grail, so what's that?
Think of it like a super-powered map of their entire data landscape.
Okay, so Grail is the map, and Odin is the navigator, using that map to guide everything. I'm following.
Perfect. Now, remember we talked about all those different technologies?
Yeah, the whole orchestra thing.
Well, Odin's got these two special agents that work at the host level.
Agents, like secret agents.
Not quite secret agents, but they do have important jobs. There's the Odin agent, that's like the general manager, making sure things are running smoothly.
Okay, the overseer.
Then there's the worker, which is more specialized. It knows how to talk to specific technologies.
So, like, if you've got a MySQL database...
You need a MySQL worker. It makes
Yeah.
sure the database containers are healthy and everything's running as it should.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like having a general contractor who manages the whole project, and then specialized subcontractors for each specific task, like plumbing or electrical.
Spot on. Now, remember how we were talking about workloads being moved around for efficiency?
Yeah, got to keep things optimized.
Well, Uber actually reschedules up to 60% of its stateful workloads every single month.
60%. That's a lot of shuffling around. How do they make sure nothing gets lost in the process?
That's where Odin's make-before-break approach comes in. They don't just yank a workload and move it. It's more like carefully transplanting a houseplant.
I'm with you. So they prepare a new spot first.
Then they replicate the workload to the new location before shutting down the old one.
Like a hot swap for data. Makes sense. Less downtime, less risk. But I gotta imagine as Uber grew, even with this super smart Odin thing, they must have hit some snags, right?
You're absolutely right. Even with all that automation and self-healing, they started experiencing some growing pains.
Growing pains. Uh-oh, what kind of pains are we talking about?
Well, the first version of Odin was a huge step forward, but it still relied a lot on human intervention for those
Right.
really complex operations.
So, like, when they needed to do a major upgrade across thousands of machines.
Exactly. It was a lot of manual coordination and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Like all these automated processes, but then for the big stuff, they're back to spreadsheets and hoping nothing breaks.
So they built this amazing automated system and then had to manually manage the automation. Sounds a little ironic.
Right. It's like having all these super efficient robots working independently, but no one's coordinating them. Chaos waiting to happen.
And as Uber got bigger, even a small hiccup could cause a major headache. Right.
Absolutely. Think about it. You've got all these remediation loops trying to keep things running smoothly. But what happens when those loops start fighting each other?
Oh, yeah, like one loop is trying to move a workload and another one's trying to upgrade it at the same time.
Yeah.
Talk about a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. And keep in mind, different technologies have different tolerances for things happening at the same time. Some are more delicate than others.
So how did they solve this? Did Uber create that robot overlord we were joking about?
Not quite a robot overlord, but close. They came up with something called the accounter.
The counter. Okay, I'm listening.
It's like a central air traffic control system for all of Odin's automated actions. Keeps everything running smoothly.
Okay, so the counter basically makes sure all these automated processes don't step on each other's toes.
That's the idea. And get this. It uses budgets to manage how many things can happen at the same time.
Budgets. So is Odin doing Uber's finances now too?
Not quite. Think of it more like a reservation system. Each operation, whether it's moving a workload, upgrading a container, whatever it is, has a limited number of seats available.
So if the budget for upgrades is full, any new requests have to wait their turn.
Yep, that's how they prevent the system from getting overwhelmed. But it gets even smarter.
Oh, how so?
The accounter doesn't just look at the type of operation, it actually considers the specific workloads involved and what state they're in. So if a workload is already in the middle of being moved, the accounter might block other operations that could disrupt it.
So it's like a bodyguard for your data, making sure nothing interferes with those critical operations.
Exactly. Now remember those really complex fleet-wide operations we talked about earlier,
Right.
like upgrading all the hosts or migrating a whole data center.
Yeah, those still sound like a massive headache, even with the counter keeping things organized.
You're telling me, even with a coordinator, those are still super complex and prone to errors. So Uber decided to take their automation game to a whole new level.
Uh-oh, what did they do?
They figured, why stop at automating individual tasks? They introduced workflows, which are basically predefined sequences of operations to achieve a specific goal.
So instead of figuring out all the steps for, say, upgrading a host, they have a workflow that lays out the whole process.
Exactly. It's like a recipe for those complex operations. Engineers who are experts in specific technologies and operational procedures, they create these workflows, outlining all the steps, checks, and what-ifs, like a detailed playbook.
So it's like having a team of specialists on hand, guiding the system through these tricky procedures.
And the best part is, the accounter manages and executes these workflows, making sure everything happens in the right order and without any conflicts.
So it's like a conductor leading the orchestra and ensuring all the instruments play in harmony.
Perfect analogy. And because these workflows are predefined and automated, it takes a huge load off the engineers. Less manual effort, less room for human error.
Sounds like a win-win. More efficiency and less risk, but how did they actually implement all of this? What's the magic behind these workflows?
Well, a key ingredient is their goal state language, or GSL for short. It's a formal language for describing the desired state of the system. Basically, they created a whole new language for talking to Odin.
GSL. So instead of using plain English or whatever, they have a specific language for defining how everything should be.
You got it. It's like a programming language, but
Oh.
instead of telling the computer what to do, you're telling it how you want the system to look. Like if you want to define how a MySQL cluster should be set up, you'd write a GSL script, specifying all the details, number of nodes, replication configuration, all of that.
So it's a standardized way to express the desired state, regardless of the technology they're using. Very elegant.
It is. And this GSL language is the foundation for those automated workflows. Engineers use GSL to describe the end goal, and the workflow orchestrates all the operations needed to get there.
So if I want to upgrade a MySQL cluster to a new version, I just define the desired state using GSL, and the workflow handles the rest.
Exactly. And because everything's defined in this formal language, it makes it way easier to validate and automate these complex operations. It's like having a blueprint that everyone understands.
Makes sense. And not only is it easier to understand, but it also makes it easier to ensure that those operations are safe and reliable, right?
Exactly. that can actually check the workflow for potential problems before it even runs.
Yeah.
Things like conflicts, resource constraints, you name it.
So it's like a safety net that catches any issues before they can cause real damage.
Then they take it a step further with something called dry runs.
Dry runs, what are those?
It's like a dress rehearsal for the system. They simulate the entire workflow without actually making any changes, just to make sure everything is in order before they go live.
That's a brilliant idea. Really shows how much thought Uber put into building a reliable system. But with all of that in place, are there any challenges left?
Well, even with all this automation, there's still some things they're working on, like how to manage those workflows as they get more and more complex.
Yeah, I can imagine keeping track of all those moving parts could get pretty hairy.
Exactly. And then there's the question of how to make Odin even smarter and more autonomous.
Right.
Like, can it learn from past operations and improve itself over time?
Ooh, that's getting into some serious AI territory. But think about the possibilities. A self-learning, self-healing data management platform? That's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It is pretty wild. But hey, Uber's already come this far. Who knows what they'll come up with next?
Yeah, it's like we've entered this whole new era where data is the lifeblood of any organization.
Definitely seems that way.
And you need a powerful heart, like Odin, to keep that blood pumping. Powerful heart, I like that analogy. So, with how important this all is, you think we'll see other companies following in Uber's footsteps, building their own Odin-like systems?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's almost like a new playbook for data management is being written, one where automation and self-healing are just the bare minimum.
Makes sense. Relying on humans to do everything just won't scale anymore.
Nope, not a chance.
Yeah.
We need these systems that can adapt and basically run themselves.
Okay, so if the systems are doing everything themselves, where does that leave us humans? Are we all going to be replaced by data management robots?
Replaced. I wouldn't go that far, but our jobs are definitely going to change.
How so?
Well, instead of constantly putting out fires and doing the same tasks over and over, we can focus on the bigger picture.
So more strategic thinking and less day-to-day stuff.
Exactly. Data professionals are going to need to get really comfortable working with these intelligent systems.
Understanding the whole data ecosystem and leveraging automation to our advantage.
Exactly. It's less about the nuts and bolts and more about the overall design.
I like that. So, speaking of design, what do you think is next for Odin? Where do they go from here?
Well, it sounds like Uber's not slowing down anytime soon.
Always iterating.
They're already looking at ways to make Odin even smarter, even more autonomous. And there's talk of integrating it with other platforms like Kubernetes.
Wow, so even after all this, they're still pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, it really goes to show that innovation never stops. There's always room for improvement, and the best systems are always evolving.
True, true. Like that saying, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And in the world of data, things move fast.
They move at lightning speed. But I think Uber's doing a pretty good job of staying ahead of the curve with Odin.
I'd say so. They've built something truly impressive. Started from a simple need and ended up revolutionizing data management.
It's been an incredible journey exploring all the inner workings of this platform. We've seen how they built it, how they tackled those growing pains, and how they're constantly pushing the limits of what's possible.
Absolutely. A fascinating look at how Uber is handling the challenges of this data-driven world. And to all our listeners out there, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Odin as much as we did.
It's just one example of the amazing things happening in the world of data, and we can't wait to see what the future holds. But until then,
Keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep diving deep.
and we'll see you next time.